I'm your instructor, Shelly Stein. This is a brief videotaped introduction for instructions on how to record your speeches for this class. There are 3 points I'm going to cover, the first being the room setup, secondly the camera setup, and third, but not least, it's the most important, is your audience. So let's take a look at this room and talk a little bit about room setup. I'm here in my dining room. This is the least cluttered room in my house, and it's the most quiet room in my house because we don't use it very often. There's no hallway behind me that will create visual or auditory noise if people are walking back and forth. When I do my recordings, I put a note on the front door saying, please do not knock or ring doorbell. I have videotaping in progress. I turn off my cell phone, I unplug my phone. I turn off the television, I make sure my cat's asleep, or I put him in another room. So you need a quiet room where you can present your presentations. It has to be a comfortable room where your audience can be seated, either in view of the camera or behind the camera or off to one side. And you can't set up your room in the bathroom. You can't do it in a closet either because it's very uncomfortable for your audience for one. The acoustics are poor and it's very creepy for me to watch those presentations. So the room setup, once you have that figured out, will be pretty easy to do. You can really videotape your presentations anywhere. You can bring your camera and have a stable base to place it while you're video recording. I have seen presentations in airplane hangars, in flight simulators, in sports fields, gymnasiums, loading docks, classrooms and other training facilities, pharmacies, dental offices, medical offices, hookah lounges. But the most common place I see videotaped presentations are at people's homes because it's the most convenient place for them. So maybe you can give your presentation in your kitchen, in your den, in your dining room, living room. I've seen speeches on front porches, in the front yard, in driveways, lots of them in garages, in the backyard, on people's docks, on people's boats even. Okay, so the places are really limitless, but you just have to consider the surrounding noise, maybe wind if you're outside, and those sort of things in the setup. With the camera, I strongly encourage that you have a tripod for stability. Don't just hand the camera to a friend because it's going to be a poor quality video if that's the case. Make sure that you invest in a cheap tripod. They're really not that expensive, or get a tabletop tripod, or even you can put your camera right there on the table to keep it steady. Whoever is helping you videotape, I do not want them to zoom in and out for any reason at all. I want you to set it up, make sure you have enough room, and that you'll always be in the screen no matter what you're doing. And it's important that I can see most of you in the camera. Okay, obviously if we have the audience members sitting around at the table here, they may obstruct the view of the speaker just a little bit, but not too much. So I preferably can see the full view. It depends on what you're doing, of course. If I were to demonstrate martial arts and I would be, let's say, in a training room, you would see the full view of me, wouldn't you? So I need to see at least your waist up, so don't stand behind a lectern or podium if you're in a boardroom. Put that aside and stand by the table. Okay? Most speakers need to have some place to put their materials and their notes. I happen to use my laptop computer for my notes, so that's where I put it. Okay. Besides that, lighting is incredibly important. I have all the lights on in the room. I have the natural light. I open the blinds. Most cameras that you'll use will not have sufficient light coming from the camera. You'll have to add a light source. I have, you can't see it, in the corner of the table here, a lamp with the shade off. That's a great source of light. If you're videotaping and you're going to show a visual aid, it's fine that you show the visual aid to the audience. You do not need to show it to the camera, okay, because the audience for your presentations will be the audience right in front of you. I don't want to see any editing of the videotapes. You do not need to put a title on them. You do not need to add in your PowerPoint slides. If I see you turn, let's say, your computer to your audience so they can see what's on the screen, or you have a handout, I can, and you think it's important that I have it, then send me a copy of that document, okay? But don't walk up to the camera and do a close-up, and don't have your camera person do a close-up. Just leave the camera as it is and continue taping. So let's go to the last point, audience. This is the most critical point. I need to see a live audience in the room with you. Okay, if I don't see them in the frame of the screen, I want you to have them walk in front of the camera, here's one option, and introduce themselves. You should always introduce who's in your audience. If that won't work, then have the camera person pan the camera over the audience so I can see them. If it's a very large audience, you obviously don't need to have them introduce themselves. Let's say if you're in an auditorium or a large boardroom and you have a large audience. The requirement in this class will be at least 4 people for your first presentation, up to 8 people for the final presentation. If someone backs out at the last minute, don't fret. We have a sliding scale. So if people don't show up and you don't have 8 people, and let's say that's the requirement, you won't have all the points taken off, just a few points taken off. Now, who would comprise an audience? It's fine for you to have your entire family come and watch your presentations, but they need to be an adult person who can comprehend and critically listen and ask questions after your presentation. So they need to be an adult. If you have people in the audience as visual aids or to help you with any of your presentation, that's fine. But if you have a child, let's say, you're changing a baby's diaper, that child will not count as an audience member. That child is a visual aid, okay, and children wouldn't count anyway. Another point about audiences is they have to be there by choice. It's okay to bribe people to come to your speech by making them dinner, let's say, afterwards. But you may not give a presentation in front of your troops or to your supervisees or to, let's say, an elementary school classroom, because those people aren't there by choice. They're doing it because they have to be there. So please consider that as you're choosing your audience. So with that, make sure that you never stop and start the camera for any reason, even before or after you introduce your audience. Okay, you're just going to have to figure that one out. It's not too difficult to do, and once you give your first speech, everything will be a piece of cake. And I'll give you feedback, so don't worry that it has to be perfect. I'm just giving you some pointers of how to make things the most effective. When you're speaking to your audience, don't look in the camera like that. Look at your audience. I'd like to have at least a half view or a side view. As long as I can see your eyes and see your movement and see that you're looking at the audience and not, let's say, notes or a manuscript on your computer screen, that's good enough for me. I've taught public speaking for 20 years. I usually am at the way back of the room, behind the camera with very poor visual and auditory feedback, and I do a very good job of providing feedback on your audience interaction, because that's what this class is all about. It's a public speaking class. It's not a media production class. You speak to your live audience. You look at them. You do not look at the camera. If you look at the camera too much, it's very creepy for me, because I'm grading a speech to that audience. So please keep these things in mind. Your room set up, having great lighting and plenty of room to move around, a room that's comfortable for your audience. The camera set up on a very stable tripod, no zooming, no editing, no starting and stopping the camera, and then finally your audience that I can see during your presentation or hear questions afterwards. So thank you very much, and good luck on your first speech.